Good afternoon, I'm Atik Rumi, bringing you the news on Gold FM.
The news headlines on Gold FM.
In your headlines, pumping fuel based on plate numbers from tomorrow. LPG to Sri Lanka from US to avoid Middle East disruptions. Iran's security chief Ali Larijani killed. Trump says no to help from NATO. Bolton warns European stance on Iran threatens Ukraine support.
The top story on Gold FM.
Measures are being taken to issue fuel on even-numbered days for vehicles with license plates ending in 0 or an even number and on odd-numbered days for all other vehicles from tomorrow. This is according to Chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, D.A. Rajakaruna. This means vehicles with number plates ending in 0, 2, 4, 6 and 8 are eligible to obtain fuel only on even-numbered calendar days. Owners of vehicles with registration numbers ending in 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9 must pump on odd-numbered days. Meanwhile, the Government Information Centre launched a dedicated WhatsApp service to assist vehicle owners struggling to register for the National Fuel Pass. Motorists can now seek technical support by messaging their vehicle number to 076 000 1919. To complete the verification, users must provide clear photographs of their national identity card, a valid vehicle revenue license, and the vehicle registration certificate. Registration remains restricted to the legal owner of the vehicle as listed on the official documentation. Authorities confirmed that the identity card number provided must match the owner details on the registration certificate for the application to proceed. Officials stated that all personal data is handled under the Personal Data Protection Act of 2022 to ensure privacy during the validation process. Data protection protocols require the permanent deletion of all personal documents from the system once verification is complete. Only the vehicle number will remain on the records to maintain the fuel permit. The Government Information Centre reminded the public to send vehicle numbers as text rather than images to ensure the automated system processes the request correctly.
This is the local news on Gold FM.
Commuters faced severe difficulties today after the government declared every Wednesday a public holiday to conserve national energy supplies. Private sector employees bore the brunt of the disruption as public transport operated on a significantly restricted schedule. The Railway Department confirmed that train services functioned under a limited weekend timetable, mirroring usual Saturday and Sunday operations. Crowds of stranded passengers were reported at major stations and bus terminals across the island, with many unable to find transport to their workplaces. SRCM Senanayaka, Secretary of the Locomotive Operating Engineers Union, urged the government to immediately reinstate cancelled trains to alleviate the crisis. Despite the nationwide holiday, Director General of Fisheries Susantha Kahavatta clarified that the Department of Fisheries remains fully operational as an essential service. Litrogas confirmed that Sri Lanka's liquefied petroleum gas supply will remain stable following a strategic shift to source fuel from the United States and West Africa. The new Swiss-based supplier Geogas is routing shipments around the African continent and via the Maldives to avoid the Strait of Hormuz. Chairman Chanda Gunawardena stated this move significantly lowers the risk of shortages previously caused by geopolitical friction between Iran and the United States. The national supply increased its monthly order to 38,000 metric tons to cover a shortfall from private competitor LAFs. While 24,000 tons already reached the country, further shipments are scheduled to arrive between the 21st of March and the end of the month. Two large mother vessels, including one currently en route from Argentina, are positioned to provide a continuous buffer for the local market. Gunawardena assured the public that the country's energy security is now firm due to these alternative maritime paths. Normally, monthly consumption fluctuates around 33,000 tons, but the current logistical arrangements provide a surplus to prevent any market gaps. This transition marks a departure from previous years when the state-linked primary importer relied almost exclusively on Middle Eastern sources via the Gulf region. The Sri Lankan ambassador to Israel, Nimal Bandara, announced that the visa period for Sri Lankan workers currently outside Israel for holidays or other reasons is extended until the 30th of April. Under this decision, re-entry visas that expired or are due to expire between February 28th and April 21st receive an automatic extension. Ambassador Bandara clarified that workers do not need to submit separate applications for this extension as the process is handled automatically by the Israeli authorities. This move aims to assist migrant employees who faced travel difficulties during the recent regional security situation. The embassy confirmed that the measure ensures the legal status of the workforce remains intact while they arrange their return to Israel. The Department of Census and Statistics reported that Sri Lanka's gross domestic product is projected to expand by 5% throughout the current year. At constant prices, the national output is expected to rise to over 13 trillion rupees, up from 12.5 trillion in 2024. Figures at current prices indicate an even steeper climb of 8.8% to over 32 trillion rupees. The industrial sector led the growth projections with a nearly 8% expansion, followed by services at 3.3% and agriculture at 1.4%. Services remain the largest contributor to the economy, making up over half of the total output. Industry accounts for a quarter of the wealth generated, while agriculture and taxes minus subsidies make up the remaining portion of the national accounts.
Now for some news in brief.
Three people have been killed and 5 others injured following a collision between 2 Sri Lanka Transport Board buses in the Veeravilla area on the Tissa Matra main road.
The business news on Gold FM.
Sri Lanka's macro-financial conditions strengthened throughout 2025, facilitating a significant expansion in credit across the banking and finance sectors. According to the report, Finance Sector Performance in 2025, issued by the central bank, the banking sector recorded a credit growth of 21.4%, driven by demand in trade, manufacturing and construction, while the finance company sector saw loans jump by nearly 52%. In the financial markets, the Colombo Stock Exchange remained resilient as market capitalization grew by over 41% despite a net foreign outflow.
International news on Gold FM.
Following a series of devastating U.S. strikes against Iranian military infrastructure, U.S. President Donald Trump revealed that while European partners privately congratulated the mission, they have refused to join a maritime task force to secure the Strait of Hormuz. The president claimed the U.S. military has effectively decimated Iran's air force and navy, yet his frustration with the transatlantic alliance remains. The special relationship with the United Kingdom was also put under the microscope. Despite a recent trade deal, the president was scathing about Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's offer of 2 aircraft carriers, noting they were only offered after the war was effectively won. Drawing a sharp historical comparison to the bust in the Oval Office, he suggested the current British leadership lacks a certain wartime spirit.
But no, I was disappointed because Keir was willing to send 2 aircraft carriers after we won, because essentially there's no threat for the aircraft carriers right now. And I said, no, we want things sent before the war, not after the war is won. So, yeah, I'm disappointed with Keir. I like him. I think he's a nice man, but I'm disappointed. You see that man right there? You know who that is? That's the late, great Winston Churchill. And Barack Hussein Obama did not want his bust in this office. Did you know that? And Barack Hussein Obama sent that bus back to England. They didn't want it. And when I came in, I was asked if I wanted it. I said, absolutely, I want it. And I put it right there, Winston Churchill. And, unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
He suggested that the refusal of NATO members to provide even basic support, such as minesweepers, was a betrayal of the support the US has historically provided to Europe.
I was surprised to see that NATO, while they agreed that it was a very important thing to do, they agree fully. Nobody said, oh, you shouldn't do it. They would have had a nuclear weapon within 1 month of when we had the B-2 bombers bomb the nuclear potential. I call it the nuclear dust. So NATO's making a very foolish mistake. And I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. This was a great test. We don't need them, but they should have been there. The other thing is, very important, we didn't have to be there for Ukraine. Biden chose to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine, and I guess the head of Germany made a statement that, they weren't involved and they have nothing to do with the war, but at the same time they think we did a great thing by knocking them out. Nobody wants to have Iran, or anybody, but nobody wants to have Iran with a nuclear, because these people are crazy. They're absolutely crazy, and they're vicious, violent.
The president didn't stop at tactical criticism. He moved toward a fundamental questioning of the North Atlantic Treaty itself. Citing the hundreds of billions of dollars in equipment provided free of charge to Ukraine, he suggested that the era of American ransom payments for European safety is over. Meanwhile, former U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton warned that European leaders risk losing American support for Ukraine by distancing themselves from the conflict in Iran. Bolton described the European stance that the Middle Eastern war is not their concern as juvenile, and cautioned that such rhetoric could provoke President Trump to abandon the Ukrainian front.
He talks about NATO as if it's some organization separate from the United States. What he's complaining about is not NATO. He's complaining about the decision of European members of NATO. And, usually when you want a coalition to help you in a war, you form it before the war starts. I mean, that's just sort of experience speaking. And he made no effort to do it. And it's also the case that European leaders are tired of being criticized by him. It's a juvenile performance by the president. But I will say I think the Europeans make a mistake by responding to that kind of juvenile behavior with juvenile behavior of their own. A number of European leaders, including Kaja Kallas, the European Union's chief foreign policy official, have said expressly, Iran is not our war. That's a very dangerous way to put it, because it invites Donald Trump. It almost teases him to come back and say, well, okay, Iran is not your war, Ukraine is not our war. It's very dangerous to approach Trump in the same way he behaved.
Meanwhile, Iranian state media confirmed the death of Ali Larijani, the country's top national security secretary, in an overnight Israeli airstrike that also killed his son and several bodyguards. The targeted assassination removed a central figure in Tehran's leadership and triggered immediate military retaliation. When quizzed on Larijani's assassination, this is what Bolton had to say.
The loss of Larijani is another big hole in the top of the leadership, and the killing of the commander of the besieged militia, I think, is also significant, because that's the force of really armed thugs that have enforced discipline in the streets of Iran cities, who are primarily, I think, responsible for killing 30,000 or more Iranian civilians last year for demonstrating. When you combine killing the commander of the besieged with what Israel and the U.S. have been doing, targeting besieged checkpoints in major cities like Tehran, destroying them as they're manned in the streets, I think it says to the besieged they're very much in the bullseye here, and I think that could have a profound effect on them.
Bolton also expressed disbelief that the president could remain unbriefed on Iran's potential to block the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, I know for a fact that he was aware of those potentials. I raised the option of regime change in Iran several times during the time I was National Security Advisor. I never persuaded the president to adopt that position, and one reason was that others had different views, and every time I raised it, they raised a whole long list of difficulties that are entailed by a regime change campaign, and that if you're going to embark on it, you better have answers to them. And certainly closing the Strait of Hormuz was always one of them, and so were attacks on the Gulf Arab states, particularly their oil infrastructure. So he knew about it in his first term. I find it hard to believe that he forgot about it in the intervening years.
In other updates, Iranian forces fired cluster munitions into Tel Aviv, leaving 2 people dead, while launching a wave of drone and missile attacks towards Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Simultaneously, United States forces dropped bunker-busting bombs on Iranian missile sites near the Strait of Hormuz to protect international shipping lanes. Meanwhile, the Israeli military intensified operations in Lebanon, flattening buildings in central Beirut and killing at least 6 people as the Middle East conflict continues to widen.
Entertainment news on Gold FM.
British author Len Deighton, who was best known for his spy novels, has died at the age of 97. Perhaps his most famous work, 1962's The Ipcress File, was turned into a BAFTA-winning film starring Michael Caine and was remade as an ITV series starring Peaky Blinders actor Joe Cole 4 years ago.
Sports news on Gold FM.
The Confederation of African Football overturned the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations final result, declaring Morocco the winners after Senegal forfeited the match. Although Senegal originally won the fixture 1-0 on the 18th of January, the governing body ruled that their team's mid-match walk-off violated competition regulations. The official record now reflects a 3-0 victory for Morocco, stripping Senegal of the title they celebrated during a recent trophy parade. That's it for the news. I'm Atik Rumi. Have a great day.